Do you ever wonder what it would be like day after day to spend time in the frozen tundra of Alaska all by yourself with little to no companionship whatsoever? And if so, you can be like me and release a multi-hour Until Dawn video that gets no traction whatsoever, and you'll know what it's like. No, but actually today we're going to be talking about a game called Arctic Awakening, which is a game that has critical highs and lows for me. To be straight up, this is a game for fans of Firewatch and games similar to it. And that is to be a fan of looking at mostly beautiful landscapes and environments while being delivered a good, character-driven, grounded story through conversations around a greater mystery. And the only word of warning I'll give you is this. I went in expecting Firewatch, and while I did get something very similar, as I've said, I walked away with my experience being very similar to Skyrim as well, in a way that I'm going to get into. My name is fallinghurts. I do reviews. I'm going to start doing news videos. And if you want to support me, consider checking out one of those longer videos, whether that be Until Dawn, Alien Isolation, even Firewatch, that are already on my channel. It would be greatly appreciated. And if you are interested in supporting the game after watching this video, you can get it on your gaming platform of choice pretty much. This review is from PC, and that's coming from Goldfire Studios. The game released September 18th, 2025, just a few months ago. It's got very positive reviews, only 200 at the time of recording. Oh, look, it's even on sale for a 10% discount, but normally the game is $25 US. But anyways, back to the review. So starting off with what I would say is the most important, the story. And honestly, the best thing I can say is, yes, it's interesting. And I mean that genuinely. We play as Kai, a pilot with a lot of baggage, or I guess maybe you could call it luggage. And while on a supply run over Anchorage, Alaska, an EMP downs the plane and leaves us in an all-out survival scenario. We weren't alone though. Also on the plane was Donovan, Kai's old military, I guess we'll say acquaintance, and also Kai's court-mandated therapy robot Alfie. While Donovan actually parachuted away and becomes kind of a voice on the radio style character, someone we're not spending direct time with, Alfie will power back on. Of course, he got hit by the EMP as well and become a constant companion throughout the game. The valley that we've crash landed into presents several open-ended mysteries involving other strange drones, abandoned research facilities, and even following in the footsteps and finding recordings of others who have braved the cold here before us. The heart of the story, in my opinion, comes down to Kai's perspectives and actions and how they may shift throughout the game, with kind of Alfie being the main guiding force and point of introspection. Without spoiling the game any further, there are twists and turns and some good moments overall. However, I do have major issues with the story. I do feel there are a few moments, 2 specific points in the story, where I think the hook of each of the individual 5 chapters of the game feel less strong. So I would say 2 of those chapters, at some point, it feels like they lose the plot just a little bit, and that has a negative impact on the pacing. In my opinion, I do believe this game is a tad bit too long. I played about 8 hours, and while I think, from what I can tell, there are multiple endings, I was satisfied with what I got. The ending decision was a dilemma that it gives 2 options. It's a moral dilemma, but to me, it was a no-brainer. It's not really one that you're going to think too hard about. You're going to be like, no, I'm just going to do this. And I never really thought twice about it. Yeah, the game makes you feel a certain way no matter what. But the number one thing I'll say is that I think the game could have refined storytelling just a bit. There were plenty of gaps where there was just walking to the next objective location, and where there was a lot of open air. This is something that Firewatch does to great results. And I'm not trying to just compare this to one of my favorite games of all time, but it's in a genre very similar to what I know that I like. You know, when there's downtime in a game like this, and you're meant to kind of take in the scenery, the open environment, and just kind of reflect on your journey so far, it can be very satisfying to have that. And there are those moments where the environment hits well. The music in this game is incredible, almost entirely through and through. Like, seriously, this music in this game, it really properly conveys that episodic mystery that the game is going for. And in that way, it kind of feels like the perfect TV music. And I mean that as a compliment. Some of my favorite music is actually from Game of Thrones, so I'm not saying it's like Game of Thrones, but you know what I mean. But really what I'm trying to say about those quiet moments in the game is that it just feels like they're a little too frequent and a little too long. The game feels too big for its britches in a lot of ways. The other way I think narratively the game could have improved was maybe a few more notes, things that weren't just audio, and it would have left a lot more open to the storytelling. The game does incredible with its environmental storytelling. The visual of what you're seeing, the story of what's happened around you is really cool, of course, as well as the radio and audio logs. But in my opinion, it can't go past that for me. So when the pacing is a little bit off or the narrative hook of an area is let down by the fact that there's so much downtime, it really drags on. And really another thing that I really want to point out as a positive for this game is just how well it handles the heart of the story. Yes, I've already talked about the major plot points, but very rarely is there a game where you can tell a robot scary stories and kind of choose how you're going to make it scary to an artificial intelligence drone. And then also there's little points where you get to play the ukulele and, sing a song. I think that's awesome. And like I said in the intro, where it's a character-driven, grounded story, yes, you're walking around with an AI drone. That's not super, ordinary as of right now. Give it a few years, I guess. Maybe by then the RAM prices will be a little better. But actually, it's just these little moments that add so much to the story and bring it back up so much from all of the detractors I may mention. Oh, and another thing. Kai, when he does find recordings, there is one chapter in the game where finding recordings is very prevalent of another character. He actually will kind of reply to them, almost in a way like you're getting his own commentary on it. And I think that's actually really, really cool because the game does a great job of characterizing Kai. Overall, I think that is one of the stronger elements of the storytelling. And it does it in a way that's not too upfront. I mean, part of the mysteries in the game is why does Kai have a therapy robot? And, it's interesting how you kind of learn about that. And it takes the whole game to truly understand and represent Kai as a character. Anyways, another thing I've talked about briefly so far is the environments and the visuals. I love the visual style in this game. It's wonderful. There are certain vista shots that are just breathtaking. I've taken plenty of screenshots in this game. Unfortunately, there's no way to get Alfie from not trying to be in the middle of your screen at all times, so you kind of have to turn the HUD off and run straight ahead just to get him behind you really quickly, but that's neither here nor there. I will say, though, I must say, there is minor pop-in, which is fine, but again, maybe if the game wasn't so large, it didn't need to be, then we wouldn't have to have that. There are also not infrequent missing assets as well, which is unfortunate, but overall I didn't have any crashes and the game ran really well on my 9070 XT. Along with the visuals, the music is great. The only other thing about the audio I'll say is that the voice acting, while it's mostly just down to a very, very small cast of characters, it is all phenomenal. Accompanied by some pretty great audio design. I mean, great footsteps, great waterfalls, and everything that really immerses you in that world. I think it does a great job. In that way, the game feels incredible. It's deserving of a lot of things. Now, when we come down to the gameplay, this is where I would say most of my issues are, outside of course, the walking, if you want to consider it gameplay, that I don't really believe is that much of a positive in any meaningful way. Of course, by that I mean most of the time you're just running around place to place. It's a walking, I don't want to say simulator, but simulator. But the game does feel like it's on autopilot. You will climb or vault over things when you walk near them automatically, which I think is a little off-putting in my humble opinion. Same with jumping. I want to have full control of my character climbing and when not to, so if I walk near a rock, I don't want that to mean that I'm instantly going to climb over it and just, I don't know, it's weird. And then actually the rock climbing walls themselves, you have to take into account where both of your hands are as you're climbing, so the idea is you're meant to shimmy back and forth and climb up, but I'd rather just be able to walk into something kind of like a ladder, I guess, especially when having complete control of where the hand goes isn't something you have other than directioning the camera and, your WASD. I say that like it's a major negative detractor. It's not. It's just, again, the point of this video is something that takes away from what is good about this game. And the issues I have here come down to Alfie. Not so much him as a character, but sometimes he kind of feels like Trico from The Last Guardian, where he's something that is your companion piece, but you can't control him. I mentioned earlier he was always getting in my way. He kind of felt like Lydia from Skyrim. That's where I'm coming down to my point, that a lot of times you're relying on him to guide you somewhere, or at least him to do something for you, and there's no controlling him in the meaningful sense. You just need to wait for him to get scripted into place, and then he will say the correct dialogue to continue something forward. And a lot of times the game is stubborn in that way. It doesn't always want to do what you say. The game has a great feature where you can kind of reload the scene you're on, which is great. And I've had to do that a couple times to start his script back up. And these annoyances, if it happened once, I wouldn't say much, but I would say that it happens at least a few times, and whether it might just be visually he's looking off or something, a lot of times it does come down to the fact that he is halting gameplay, which again, it all comes down to pacing for this. I spent about 8 hours in this game, and I really feel like it could have been a 6-7 hour experience, you know what I mean? But outside of that gameplay, there is a nourishment and also kind of, I want to say sanity, but like our overall mental well-being meter as well. You can raise both of those by eating to some degree, but if you really want to get your mental up, you need to meditate at these rock stations, which it's just a cool little thing. It's nothing crazy. Again, I think it adds to the immersion level of the game because I think it probably plays into Kai's therapy and, those breathing exercises. Outside of that, you can pick up plenty of different items. There's a few collectibles you can look for in your adventures. And the only thing I want to say is that there are a few tiny little baby physics puzzles and things like that in the game, or things that the game asks you to do out of the ordinary. And yeah, it just makes me long for more. I wish the game had a few extra puzzles. It didn't need them, but for the length of the game, I would have liked some variety other than just walking, talking, and, maybe picking up an item that you need. So whether the game is missing a gameplay mechanic or the game is a little bit too long for my liking, I'm not really sure. And I don't want to take too long on this video either, so let me just say this. Arctic Awakening is a game that has a satisfying conclusion, and that is the number one thing you can ask for in a narrative adventure game. It's got beautiful environments to walk around in, even if sometimes that does falter on its presentation. And regardless of how many hours you want to spend in it, I do believe you'll walk away satisfied in the end, although there may be a few annoyances along the way. In my humble opinion, if you're looking at a $25 game, you could pick it up on its light sale right now, or you could, in good conscience, get it anytime you'd like. Me personally, I know I just saw that the game's soundtrack is on sale, so I'm going to be buying that so I can put it in my videos in the future very easily. So that's my best thing to say. I look forward to seeing whatever happens next with the studio and whatever game comes next. Was it my favorite experience of all time? No, but it was good. And it did leave me guessing here and there, which is great. Now, I hope you don't leave me guessing as to whether you will subscribe to my channel. I would really hope you do, and please consider checking out that Until Dawn video. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Maybe she could help with my own drone problem. The hell?